what attracted you to the idea of being a startup founder? And if you still remember now when you first heard about startups, and what did you think of such an idea of, hey, it would be nice to be a startup founder and not just an employee?
Yeah, of course. I was already a founder, so I was already running my agency, so I was familiar with entrepreneurship. But I've heard about startups and tech startups, I think just a couple of years before I started my own startup. And I wasn't really dreaming about becoming a startup founder, or I wasn't dreaming about becoming an entrepreneur in the first place. Kind of stumbled into that one, accidentally in a way. But whilst I was building my agency, I was thinking about products. I was thinking about I was imagining that it's much easier to get clients and to grow a product. You build it once and then you just scale it. You know, they come to you. You build a magnificent product and then you're just going to get clients. You do marketing for it, and I know how to do marketing. So, you know, it's going to be much easier than working with clients as an agency. Yeah, that was wrong. I didn't expect how hard it's going to be. It is more, in my personal opinion, it is more rewarding to build a product company and to build, you know, a tech startup than, you know, running an agency and working with clients, just because of the scale, right? You can touch so many clients, and you can really focus on a problem. I think I do really love to focus on a problem and go deep into it, whilst, you know, working with clients, you don't go as deep into their business, or I wasn't going as deep in their business. And it's very diverse set of problems, whilst I think my mind is more geared towards like really going deep into and really focused into a problem.
Tell us more about how you stumbled into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, for sure. So with my agency, I was in a student organization, and they were looking, the sponsor of the student organization, which was Coca-Cola, they were looking for someone to run their social media pages. You know, it was back then when social media was something that you would give to a student, because, you know, who else knows how to do social media management? So they were looking for someone. They weren't looking to hire. They were looking for a vendor. And I said, you know, hey, I can do it. I'd love to do it. I loved, you know, digital communications. I was studying that back then. So I kind of raised my hand and I said, you know, how hard can it be to run a company? Let me incorporate you know, a SRL, and let's see, you know, how this goes. Once I did that, I realized, okay, I have Coca-Cola in my portfolio. I can go, you know, and you know, get other clients, because it's, you know, it's an impressive client, and I can convince, you know, other brands. So that's kind of how it became. It became a little, you know, business, a little agency. It wasn't necessarily because I was dreaming from when I was 5 years old about becoming an entrepreneur. I didn't see a lot of models like that around me, and certainly, you know, women entrepreneurs, not a lot. So that wasn't something that I was considering. I didn't even think that was on the table. But once I stumbled upon it, I think I had the courage to say yes.
Coming back to Planable,
yeah.
Did you guys have, let's say, a plan B in case this project would fail?
Yeah, we thought about plan Bs every now and then, whenever, you know, things were, you know, really dire. So we always thought that, hey, we're super young. We were 22, 23 years old. We can always go back and, you know, get jobs in agencies, or can always get back and start another, you know, agency from the get-go, or, you know, go get a job. So the plan B was, we had it, you know, in our mind. It wasn't something that we weren't really scared about failing or about our future, because we knew that we could, you know, at all times go get a job. I think we were more scared about disappointing the people that supported us along the way. We had a lot of people from the Spheric Accelerator towards, you know, overall the Romanian startup ecosystem, people from the community and mentors. They really, you know, invested time in supporting us and helping us. So the pressure was more towards not disappointing those people and kind of doing well by them. And I think that's, because we were so young and we were so impressed by those people that we really wanted to prove them that, they were right. They were right in trusting us, and they were right in investing in us. And that was more important to us than like the career. We didn't build too much of a career before starting Planable, so it would have been easy to get back to any kind of job in marketing or web development. So that wasn't really an issue.
The idea behind Planable started while you were in Moldova, which is an even smaller startup ecosystem than Romania is in the whole European ecosystem.
Tiny, yes.
How was it from a mindset point of view, or what did you have to overcome to build or start the idea there and then develop it in Romania and also outside Romania?
I think we got very lucky because we did come up with the idea whilst in Moldova, but we won a startup competition in Moldova, and the prize was a couple of weeks at Spheric in one of their boot camps. So we very quickly moved to Cluj and started the product there. So we were instantly exposed to the community here in Romania and the startup mentality here that was really growing back then. It was right at the cusp of kind of exploding and growing and really blooming. So it was, the perfect time for us. We were, one of the first startups that went through accelerators in Romania, and one of the first Romanian startups that went to Techstars and, accelerators of the caliber of Techstars. So the biggest thing for us was like mentality and really switching gears from what is possible, what can be built, and really, adjusting our mentality to thinking 10x. We were thinking globally from day one. So the product that we built, we knew that this should serve like a global audience, but adjusting our expectations, adjusting our ambitions, and adjusting our imagination really to what is possible. I think that was one of the biggest things that we had to do, and we were super, super lucky that we got mentors that like really inspired us and really showed us what's possible.
What did you find most difficult, or let's say most challenging when building Planable?
I mean, everything about building a startup is difficult, from fundraising to getting customers to building the team to maintaining really good and evolving your founder dynamic to the people on the team, to dealing with investors on your board. Everything is super, super difficult. But if I would have to choose one, I think for us, the one of the hardest things was positioning the product in a competitive market, in a very growing landscape, right? And explaining that to external people, such as investors as well, of where we fit. Planable was perceived as a niche product in the beginning, right? Collaboration for social media content teams. So finding ways to evolve that and expand the product so that it caters to a bigger market and a bigger audience. That was one of the most difficult things. And saying no to our customers whenever they had, feature requests that would take us from our vision and would, put us more into that social media management tools space, which we didn't want to touch. We wanted to become, collaboration for content, but we were getting a lot of requests from customers to build features in a different direction. So saying no to them and really staying true. I mean, first figuring out what our positioning and vision for, in the next 10 years would be, but also staying true to it. and finding our own place in the market, or maybe to be more correct, to create our own market or our own category. I think that is definitely one of the most difficult things. Yeah.
I mentioned the funding part.
Yeah.
And from what I know, you kind of bootstrapped and...
Almost bootstrapped. That's how I love to say. We're almost bootstrapped.
And you went out after little money from investors. But you've managed on your own to get thousands of paying customers, to have revenues, to have profit, to make profit.
Yeah.
And I would like to ask you to walk us through what happened. How did you manage all this and not directly go after funding like other
startups.
like other startups.
Like what's common in the industry, right? You go from round to round, and we had a completely different approach to building Planable. We raised less than 1 million, which, by large is considered almost bootstrapped. And our last round was in 2019, and we're completely profitable and really growing. And I think it's a lot about, first of all, fundraising is not the most pleasant activity. That's something that has influenced a little bit our thinking around it. But mostly we were really focused on making Planable work. And we wanted to get to a position where we didn't need to raise money, and we wanted to do that in order to scale. So we wanted to get to that place, and we really focused on doing that. And we were talking about what was the most difficult thing. If I would have to think about the luckiest thing that happened to us, I think, our growth. I mean, we've put a lot of sweat and tears and effort into it, but at the same time, I feel so lucky about the way Planable has grown, and it's been doubling year over year, and we've managed to do that very, very efficiently, which is, I think, our hallmark as a company, capital efficiency and managing to, build a growing business, with ROI in mind. And I think that goes to the personality of the founding team. I think myself and our CMO, which is in charge, of 90% of our revenue, both of us are, we want to make things work, and we want to make them, work well. And then once we've done that, we can go and, raise a lot of capital to basically pump it into this, machine. But we have to make the machine work first. And I know that a lot of founders do it the other way around. For me, it really works. I want to make sure that it works, and then, go for it.
Still on the subject of funding, why so little funding, and what did you guys discover about investors while talking with them and made this conscious choice not to go after funding and, like you said, grow on your own and prepare the business to evolve on itself?
I think it's a little bit the timing as well. So we closed our last round, our seed round, in 2019, right? So then the pandemic came, right? So it wasn't the right timing to do. We were, really focused on the day-to-day operational part, and then there was the boom of 2021, and we didn't feel confident in raising a round then because we were figuring out the channels right then, and we were still trying to understand how Planable has grown so much in the past years, and what drove, what channels drove it, what tactics, how it grew. So we were trying to explain it to ourselves, and I didn't feel confident that I would be able to explain it very well to investors as well. I wanted to understand it myself first and then go after it. So although we had a lot of inbound interest from VCs in 2021, and our own investors were, suggesting to raise our Series A, we wanted to figure out, we didn't want to raise and sit with that money in the bank accounts, right? Take the dilution and not be able to efficiently deploy the newly raised capital. So it was also a matter of timing, right? And now, 2022 and 2023, the timing is not great again. So, but luckily we are profitable, so we're growing profitable, so we can park the idea of a Series A until timing is a little bit better. So timing is also super, super crucial in a startup.
From your point of view, what should a startup founder give into and also not give into when talking with investors about raising money?
Interesting. Current investors, you mean like your own investors or investors that you're talking to, pitching?
Pitching, but also with your current investors, if
there
are different...
with current investors, I mean, from my own experience, it's important to not let yourself kind of go with the hype and the excitement that rounds bring. You see a lot of news out there about like this company raised that much, this company, and your own investors, you see them, they're recommending, they're advising you to go do that. So kind of staying true to your focus and really thinking if you need that extra round, if you need the size of that extra round, or do you want to raise like a really big round because you actually need it, or because it is so sexy and it's going to look so good in news, or like thinking about those things really rationally and critically, and not letting yourself be pushed by either news and what you're seeing in the media, or your own, the people and the mentors and the investors around you. You have to do it when you feel that the timing is good for your company. Of course, take advice, listen to it. It's precious advice, and I really believe that investors and mentors can make you see discover blind spots, but in the end you have to follow your gut. Whilst with when you're pitching investors, the question was like what to take, what not to take, what to agree with, what not to agree with, like what boundaries to set. For us, it was really, really important to be able to not necessarily control, but be able to make decisions and steer Planable in the right direction without pressure and without having, we wanted investors that would trust us, that would see that we've built, this great company so far, and they would trust us in our decisions moving forward. So we wanted investors that would support us, really be there for us, obviously challenge us when they think we're not right, but in the end, trust our decisions. And I think we were extremely lucky to get that. Our lead investor, when we signed the term sheet, the first thing he told us was, now I work for you. How can I help? And that is, I loved that. And somehow we got super, super lucky, and we have an incredible set of investors. And I think, finding investors that you have good chemistry with and you really align on the vision for the company is important.
You've mentioned women founders, women entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you if during these years you've encountered a different approach, or let's say a different approach when talking with investors or with fellow startup founders on the fact that you are a female startup founder.
I'm not sure. I don't know if I have a different approach, because I don't know what it's like to be a male founder. So I don't know if my approach is different than their approach. I think my approach is just like my approach, Xenia's approach, and I'm not sure if I'm doing anything differently. Like in terms of, I'm reading the news, so I'm up to date with everything that's happening in the startup world, all the discrimination and everything, and I'm sure it's usually hidden, right? So it's usually super, super hidden, and it's usually really hard to spot when that's happening to you. Although I did hear a lot of things, a lot of advice that I didn't feel like a lot of advice about being more sharky, being more cutthroat, more, killing it, crushing it, which I don't think like that's how you have to be as a founder. And I don't think that applies to everyone. I don't think everybody needs to have that. And I think that relates to overall the type of founders that the investors have seen in the past. But I think that's changing. I think their eyes are, they're going to see different styles of leadership and different styles of building companies. And I think that's important.
You've mentioned before that Planable was from the start built with having in mind the idea of being an international company, an international startup, an international solution. What opportunities did you see when first starting on the market, and made you think that it's going to be an international product and you can fight with or side by side with international players?
We've seen products, we've followed a lot of companies that were doing something inspiring, in our opinion, and we were looking up to a few companies that had the same kind of makeup as Planable did. Like we were looking up at Envision, which is a company that does collaboration on design, so kind of the precursor of Figma. And we were looking at Dropbox. So we've seen, products that were self-service, really easy to use, delightful, simple, easy, fast onboarding. So we knew that our product, the way we were thinking about it and the way we were designing it, had the foundation and the makeup of becoming a global company like those ones. So that was something that was inspiring us. And then we did a lot of customer development, a lot of interviews to validate if this is a problem that just us struggled with, if this is just agencies in Moldova or are brands struggling with this? And the answer was yes. Are marketers in the US and in Australia or South Africa, are they also struggling with this problem? And after a lot of interviews and validation, we realized that yes, the answer is yes. So it looks like this is a larger market that we even thought about.
How did you see the Romanian startup ecosystem when you first started, and also how did you see it evolve during these years?
Yeah, it was really, really exciting. I haven't seen anything like that before, It was similar to Startup Week Moldova, but instead of a weekend, that was, it was ongoing. Every day had that energy and people coming from different backgrounds and so many ideas and a very fast learning experience that we were going through, and a lot of people with a lot of experience that we could learn from, and all of them believed in us, which seemed so strange back then. We were just some kids from Moldova, and they saw something in us, and that was amazing to me. So, but at the same time, there weren't that many other startups that we could learn from or that many experiences. We couldn't look up to, UiPath because, it wasn't that known back then. It wasn't, as successful as it is right now. So we couldn't look at, models like UiPath or FintechOS and say, oh, they did it from Romania. So it's, it's possible. So that was always, something, a doubt in the back of our mind that there weren't that many successful models around us. And that was, a struggle. But luckily we had, mentors around us that have seen it, have seen it happening in Silicon Valley, have seen it happening, in other startup ecosystems. So we trusted them, and, we really put our mind to work to make this happen.
And taking into consideration what you said before, how do you see the evolution, let's say, during the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, super.
Where do you think that we're heading?
Yeah, I think since we started, when there was like this crazy energy, at the beginning of something, so much hype, and you knew everybody in the startup ecosystem, because it was quite small. It evolves quite a lot in the past year. So many programs and accelerators and incubators and startup competitions, and not just in the main hubs, not just in Bucharest or Cluj, but Oradea and Iași and everywhere. And it's very beautiful to see and very inspiring. A lot of startups have already gone through Techstars, through YC, so we're really making a reputation for ourselves here in Romania. And the conferences, How to Web and Tech Sylvania and Cluj as well, they've progressed a lot, and they've really evolved. Just by looking at the prizes that they offer a startup competition, it's unimaginable. It's really awesome to see. I can't even imagine what the next 5 years or the next 10 years are gonna look like for Romania. But I hope it's gonna be more successful, more role models, more successful stories about startups, more UiPaths. But I think UiPath is such an N of one. It's just one company that not just succeeded, but blew our socks off, basically. What I would like to see is more Series A companies. There's a lot of seed, there's a lot of pre-seed, a lot of startups going through accelerators and incubators. I would like to see the Series A layer more consolidated, and there's been a couple of companies that have done that, but I think that's what the next 5 years are going to be about. More Series A, more Series B, and hopefully unicorns as well.
Taking into consideration where you are now, where Planable is at this point in time, do you think that it was easier or harder having Romania as a starting point or as a development point for you, and not another European country, let's say, or the States?
I didn't think it mattered that much for us in terms of customers and closing customers. Planable is we get customers from inbound. It's targeting medium-sized companies, small companies as well, and that all happens through our website, self-service. Test it, put your credit card, and the larger customers, we just close them over Zoom, right? So there's no need for a sales presence in the US. That's not how our business grows. So I think it didn't matter that much to us from that perspective. But I do think that the rounds that we've raised in the past would have been bigger, just by the fact that we would have been, in a different country. I think that definitely the size of the rounds and the terms of the rounds are different, and it does impact the setup of the round. But also going back to what I've been talking, other founders, learning from other founders. There's not that many SaaS founders of Series A level in Romania, so it's really hard to connect with peers. There's not that many communities or not that many other companies to learn from, to talk about how do you optimize churn, how, what do you do about pricing, how do you A/B test it, all of those questions that are always in your mind. You have to get resources online, or you have to get yourself into communities online, and it's not the same experience as connecting live with people from, from the same environment that you're coming from. And also the mentality, I think the environment shapes the way you're thinking about what's possible and the type of company you can build. And if you're in a different environment, it might, give you that extra nudge and that extra push. And we had to always be super conscious to always push ourselves, because there's not that many companies succeeding, but it's also at the same time super inspiring, because you get to build a company that is really great, and you're a big fish maybe in a small pond, or it's your choice what you want to do with your life, but both options work.
What do you think that is our or your ingredient as startup founders here in Romania, and what's good and what's bad about startup founders here?
My personal ingredient, I think, is resilience, discipline, and product instinct. I think those three are the ones that would define my DNA as a founder. And I think I have resilience in common with a lot of founders that I see in Romania, and a lot of hunger. I see and I feel a lot of hunger coming from Romanian founders, and I think that's amazing, and we should keep it up.
And what do you think? What's bad? Or these are the good attributes.
Right.
What's bad about startup founders from Romania?
It's just a matter of the ecosystem and the learning opportunities. But I think, obviously we need to learn a lot of about growth and marketing, because if you create a startup and you're shaped and modeled in Silicon Valley, growth marketing and business and getting customers and sales and all of that stuff, it comes naturally from learning how to do public speaking in school throughout your career. You have a lot of growth marketing roles or product marketing roles in companies, and you get to learn there, you get to build your experience and your career there. And when you get to start a company, you have all of that experience. And where do you learn growth marketing in Romania? Where do you, product roles, they've been coming up lately, but revenue and product-led sales and product-led growth, all of those things, onboarding, how to do great onboarding, how to increase LTV, those are things that you don't get to learn them, or you don't get to work on those topics quite a lot in usual careers or jobs in Romania. So you have to teach yourself. You have to be a self-starter. And I think we have that. I think that's what's great, about Romanian founders. We are self-starters, so we can overcome those knowledge gaps by just connecting ourselves as much as possible with the outside communities. Going at accelerators in London, in New York, in San Francisco, to just absorb as much as we can from the common knowledge of those ecosystems.
And my last question, or let's say a question. What title would you give to a documentary about Romanian startups? What
title? I was actually so curious. White Tigers of Romania. That's the working title, as I understand. So I'm super curious. White Tigers of Romania. But yeah, I'm sure you'll explain that to me later. What title? Maybe the underdogs of startups. The underdogs of the startup world. I think something along those lines.